Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, right off the bat, I want you to check in with yourself for a second. You're gripping something right now, aren't you? Maybe not literally with your hands, but there is a version of you, somewhere this week, with your jaw clenched just a little bit tight, pushing on a thing that absolutely will not move no matter how hard you push it. We've all been there. And today, we're going to break down why that exact instinct is just fundamentally flawed.
Section 1. The Paradox of Pushing. We literally live in an era of constant modern stress where we needlessly hurl our energy at immovable objects. Let's look at some classic examples.
It's the ninth draft of a job application. You know, the one you've completely rewritten for the ninth time, obsessing over every single comma, absolutely convinced that one more tiny tweak will magically secure the offer.
Or it's the conversation you just keep replaying in your head over and over and over again, desperately trying to find that one magic sentence, that perfect comeback that would have just fixed the whole interaction.
Or maybe it's the adjusted plan with 3 more steps. The last version completely failed, so surely this version, by just piling on 3 more complicated steps, will finally work. It's a frantic, exhausting energy.
But here is where we hit a massive wall. Some part of you has probably started to notice something really strange about all this straining. The harder you push, the less actually happens. Not nothing, less. Just let that sink in for a second. It is as if effort, past a certain point, isn't just neutral. It actively works against you. You think the answer is more force. It isn't.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 2, the sleep experiment. There's this incredibly relatable story from our source material about aggressively trying to fix a sleep problem, and it perfectly illustrates this exact paradox. The author went through a brutal 4-month stretch of trying to fix their sleep. And I don't mean casually, I mean aggressively trying to sleep. Just look at the sheer rigor of these steps. 1. Use the sleep app. 2. Tape the schedule to the wall. 3. Do breathing exercises correctly. They literally taped a sleep schedule to the bedroom wall and read 3 separate books on the topic. Every single night, they'd lie there, doing the breathing exercises perfectly, doing absolutely everything correctly, and every single night, they'd end up more awake than when they started. Why? Because some part of them was actively working. They were working at resting, which, if you just say it out loud, is a completely ridiculous concept. But then came the breakthrough. One night, they just completely gave up on the entire rigid system. They just laid there in bed, annoyed, staring straight at the ceiling, not even trying to do the breathing technique right anymore. And what happened? Staring at the ceiling? Not trying? Asleep in 10 minutes. They didn't really understand it at the time, but the answer was actually waiting in an ancient philosophy.
Section 3. The Wisdom of Water. To truly understand what happened that night, we need to slow things down a bit. Let's pivot away from our modern, app-driven sleep struggles and look back at a very old Chinese text. Lao Tzu didn't write his texts for people trying to fix their sleep schedules, right? As far as anyone can tell, he was writing in an era of constant, exhausting political scheming. He lived in a time where literally everyone was straining to control outcomes that just kept slipping through their hands anyway. And in the midst of all that chaotic effort, he just watched water. That's the image he kept returning to again and again. Water doesn't force its way through solid stone. It doesn't strain or stress. It just keeps being water. It naturally flows, and eventually, over time, the canyon just happens. He called this concept Wu Wei, doing only what the moment actually requires, and not one motion more. Now, this is usually translated as non-action, which is honestly highly misleading. People hear that and immediately dismiss it because it sounds like a convenient excuse to just do nothing. But it isn't doing nothing. It literally means doing only what the moment actually requires, and not one single motion more.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core difference between the two approaches. Most of what we call effort today is actually just resistance. It's us straining against the shape of what's already happening, entirely convinced that straining is the exact same thing as trying. But Wu Wei, on the other hand, is about moving with the shape of things.
Section 4. 3 shifts in effort. So, how do we actually apply this ancient wisdom to our highly stressed modern lives? Our source outlines 3 practical shifts in how we view effort. Let's walk through them together.
Number 1. This first shift is a small one, but man, it unpacks so much of the psychological baggage we carry around with us every single day.
We have been treating effort as proof. Proof that you care. Proof that you're serious. Proof that you actually deserve the outcome you want. Because of this, even when an extra push isn't helping at all, you just keep pushing. You keep pushing because stopping feels like admitting you just didn't care enough. But here is the absolute truth.
effort was never the thing measuring your worth. It just felt that way because effort was the only variable you could actively control. Let's move to number 2 and see how this builds into the second shift, which really sits right underneath that first realization.
Think about the moments you actually did something incredibly well, like effortlessly well. You probably don't remember those moments as requiring massive, grueling effort at all. You probably remember them as almost accidental. But the source makes a fantastic point here. That isn't luck. That is simply what it looks like when you finally stop fighting the shape of the thing and just start moving with it.
Which brings us to number 3. This shift is much quieter than the other 2, but it is perhaps the most liberating thing we'll talk about today. It's about totally redefining our concept of surrender.
Consider this profound idea. Sometimes doing less isn't surrender. Sometimes it's the only version of trying that was ever going to work. We push and we force because society constantly tells us that doing less is giving up. But sometimes stepping back, breathing, and doing less is the absolute optimal and only way to actually try. We've just never been given the permission to call it trying.
Section 5. Fear in effort's clothes. Now, understanding Wu Wei doesn't mean you're never going to stress again. Even the author admits they still tighten their jaw sometimes. They still catch themselves pushing on doors that were never, ever going to open that way. This philosophy doesn't instantly fix the human condition, but it does give our struggle a name. So, the crucial point is this. The next time you catch your hand gripping something a little too hard, the next time you find yourself aggressively working at resting or frantically rewriting that draft for the 10th time, remember the water. Remember Wu Wei.
I want to leave you with a final, provocative question from the text, one that I honestly haven't quite settled for myself yet either. Look at your life right now. How much of what you call effort lately is actually just fear wearing effort's clothes?